Welcome back to Weatherford Daze. This is Jason and Rachel once again. We're glad you're joining us this week. I have no idea what the topic is, but Rachel knows, and she's going to tell me and string me along and make me sweat about it.
I am.
Oh, I don't know. Are you?
I didn't think I'd do that.
Oh, I don't know. I thought it'd be fun to watch me squirm for a little bit. I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe it'd be fun for the audience to watch me squirm.
Or it could be really boring for the
Oh,
audience.
yeah. They're like,
Maybe we
yeah,
shouldn't do
your
that.
yeah, your squirming is not that interesting. So
I don't know. Like we could do ASMR, we could whisper and just
squirming.
Okay, no, let's
No,
not do
that didn't
that.
work. Okay,
Nah.
awesome.
That's not a us thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so the topic that I wanted to talk about today is much lighter,
Okay.
much more fluffy, but I think will still be interesting. And I think that a lot of people might think at first that it's a little bit boring, but I'm hoping that we can make it not boring and actually relevant to today because I
Okay.
want to talk about something that's actually a very old fashioned term, a very old fashioned concept, not something that's really talked about much today. And it is the value of being demure.
I see.
I would tend to say that a lot of people haven't even heard of this concept in present day. It's not something that we teach our ladies to be anymore. However, I was actually reading a book this week. It's Kit Morgan's newest book. She comes out with them all the time. I've talked about her on this channel before.
Yes.
It's, she tends to be one of those authors that's just very light and fluffy and easy to read, and you kind of don't have to have your brain turned on too much. But this book is, let's see, it's called Wilbert. It's one that's set in probably late 1800s, early 1900s. There's, in a old western town, they have trains and still have, rustlers and cowboys and all that kind of stuff. So set in that genre.
Is
It's
it in the Old West or is it just in the time frame?
it's in the West.
Okay. So demurity is
Demure.
is
Now,
probably not with everyone. I would think there'd be some dust-covered
mhm,
cattle rustlers and the like
but
that
it
would.
still was something that as they were settling these towns and they had couples coming, and this is the time when they had a lot of mail order brides and that kind of thing. But you will see these very old fashioned values that were still just, they just were. It wasn't something that was even necessarily taught, it just was a part of the culture.
Like
That,
East people from the East
yeah.
would go
Now,
west.
you didn't necessarily have the refined part of that. You know,
Etiquette,
yeah,
protocol.
over in England, ladies were taught to be refined and genteel as well as demure.
Ye- I've heard that word a lot more when it came to people in that time frame as genteel
Mhm.
and a gentleman, a
But
gentle lady.
part of the concept of being demure for a lady was that she just didn't ask too many questions, especially of a gentleman, right? She
Oh,
was
okay.
supposed to let him lead. She was supposed to let him be the one to tell her if she, what they were doing. She wasn't really supposed to ask necessarily. She wasn't supposed to demand. And in these books set in that time period, it's one of the things that comes up over and over and over again is the most common trope is that the lady never really knows whether the guy actually likes her or not.
Well, it
Does
seems
he
like,
like me? Does he not?
well,
How
yeah,
do I, well, am I allowed to fall in love with her? Where are we going? What are we doing with this? It's a
living in
pretty
constant suspense,
mhm.
social suspense.
And I just was thinking about, that is something that very much came up in these old fashioned books. You have the whole in Pride and Prejudice, Jane, they in the 2005 version at least, you have the interaction between Elizabeth and Darcy where
Hmm.
he's going, I observed your sister very closely and I determined that she had no strong feelings for Bingley whatsoever. And her response is, she's shy. She's My sister is shy. But honestly, she was demure. That was really what you're saying. She
Kind
was
of
not
reserved
right. It
in
was
her feelings.
considered a very forward, very bold thing for a lady to just go out and demand communication. What are we doing? What are you thinking? Where are we in this relationship? That was not something that, at
Can you
that
have
time
a
period you
simple
could
ask?
ever.
Can you have a simple ask? When you say demand, it sounds like you're putting your finger in someone's face and
Right.
saying, "You tell me right now where we're at in this relationship."
Well,
A simple ask is
a
just,
simple
how is
ask, but
that
at the
forward?
same time, it would have been considered forward for the woman to ask before the man was ready to tell her. And it got me thinking because there's something else that I listened to recently that kind of got me thinking too. And I want to connect this to modern day.
Okay.
And whether this is something that we've lost that maybe is good or whether it's bad or it, where do we stand on that? How, because there's a lot of things that we look at in the way that dating relationships happen nowadays that people are very critical of how men and women function. And I want to talk about that some too. So, see where we go.
There's a lot to talk about that. A lot of the videos that come up in my feed, there is. Uh, I'll tell you one. This woman comes on and she says, "Here's how I let a man know that I might be interested." And she goes, and she does this little subtle motion of her head, her eyes. It's like, and the woman who's commenting on this goes, "How does a guy even know?" And for the longest amount of time, if a guy came over and said, "Hi, I'm interested," or "Can I buy you a drink," or something, they'd be like, "Back off, creeper." And and guess what? We I don't want to say we because I've been married most of this time, but I would say we as a male gender, whatever, we did. We backed off. We did not want to seem forward. And once we respected the boundaries, now they're like, what do we do now? And so,
It
so
seems like
it's
there's a
it's a
lot of
gamesmanship.
frustration
Yeah.
on both sides where it's the guys are going, either I'm too,
Oblivious.
confident
Yeah.
and try to, go up and approach women, but then they hate me for that, or I'm too shy and
Was
never.
confidence, confused for aggression,
Right,
or
right.
how dare you? And you're
There's a
like, well,
lot
fine
of
then.
mixed messages, and
Ugh.
it's also very frustrating for the girls too, going, I don't know how to tell if a guy is interested in me or not. And then if I open my mouth and ask, I feel like I'm not being feminine. I feel like I'm
Well,
not being,
the
especially
rejection
for.
is too much. Honestly, we don't we as men don't deal with rejection very well.
Mhm.
We really should be better about that. We really should be confident in ourselves to go, okay, so I'm not for you. Awesome. Um, I'll talk to the next person.
Well, let me talk about this other
Yeah, yeah,
angle that I wanted to get to because it does connect in here.
that's good.
And it was something that made me think because I was listening to a girl who she is someone that came out of Mormonism,
Hmm.
and she does a lot of videos kind of just talking about that experience, having left that, and just really does a lot of exposing what the mindset is behind it and, what just her experiences were. And I meant to look up her name so I could put it on here, and I forgot to do that. We'll put that on the screen because I do want to credit her. But she was
It'd be funny if I've
talking.
seen some of her
Oh, you
videos too.
probably have.
Yeah,
She was talking about things in Twilight because Stephanie Meyer, the author
right.
of Twilight, is Mormon,
LDS, yeah,
right?
slash
LDS.
Mormonism. Mormon.
And she was saying, some things that people don't realize came from Mormonism. And one of the things that she mentioned was that Bella never told the guys in her life no. Now, when she is being approached by all these different guys, being asked to prom and the dances and stuff, and she is very, very uncomfortable in the way that she's not interested in any of these guys. She doesn't want to go. She makes excuses. She makes up this fake trip that she's going to go on in order
Right.
to say, oh, well, I can't go with you. And one of the guys, she's like, Mike, have you considered asking Jessica? I know she really wants to go with you.
Right.
And
I
then,
remember that. Yeah.
right. So it's a very uncomfortable situation for her because she can't just tell a guy, no thanks. And the thing is, this YouTuber was saying that that is a very Mormon thing because Mormon girls are taught to never tell guys no. Is
That's problematic if the guy
mhm.
has bad intentions.
Well, the thing is they say, if you're at a dance and a guy asks you to dance, you always must dance with him. You can never ever, or provide some way, some out, some alternative for him so that he doesn't feel hurt. And I kind of went, you know, leaving all of the
That's way
ramifications.
too protective of the guy's
Yeah.
feelings.
Now, we have to realize, I mean, that is that is a cult. There's a lot of things that are kind of messed up in that. And if you are interested, again, we'll put the name of this YouTuber up on the screen. She has some great videos and goes more into depth into that. But me watching this, I went, now that's really interesting because a lot of things that are part of Mormon culture are also a part of Christian culture
Yeah,
in some
they're
ways.
just tilted slightly.
Usually
Yeah.
they aren't quite as rule bound in Christian societies. I mean, some of them, some Christian denominations more so than others are more legalistic with the rules of how you should behave. But there's a lot of that culture that's still maybe there, it may be unspoken,
Yeah.
but I went, you know, I read this and never caught that as being Bella couldn't tell them no. I kind of just went, oh, well, Bella's just nice. She doesn't want to make people feel bad. She doesn't, and also I went, she's a young girl and she doesn't know how to handle
It's
this
possible
unexpected attention.
she has a people pleaser syndrome or something like
Right.
that people have sometimes.
And
Not
I
not
just
that it's
went,
based off,
that's just a normal girl.
but a lot of times authors will,
Hmm.
put a little bit of them. We've talked about this before. They put a little bit of themselves in that, and it's hard. And if you were to confront them, they'd be like, "No, no, I just." But it's there. It's something that writers do, and when we write, we find that sometimes we do that.
But it really is kind of one of those that I went, do we? I mean, it's a very old-fashioned theme. Even, just going how women should act is based off of how men want them to act in some ways. And in some ways, that is a good thing. You want to be liked. You don't want to be an abrasive person, but at the same time,
Men
you
should
don't
have
want to
rules too,
completely.
though. Well, men should have. It shouldn't just be this is how we want
Right.
women to act, and we do whatever we feel, and that gives a lot of,
There's a middle ground there, I guess, is where we're going. It's like,
yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing
It can go
to
backwards if you
want
don't watch it.
to be liked, to want to be, just kind to people in the way that you're acting.
Yeah.
And I feel like, sometimes in today's society, we can go too far of going, well, if the guy doesn't like it, just tough, whatever. And the guys can also, well, I feel like guys don't do that right now in our society. I feel like
They
they
don't. They don't do
probably,
what?
they don't, they don't think that girls just have to deal with their behavior, whether they like it or not, that they're going to act the way that they are going to act. I feel like right now we've overcompensated, because I feel like back at this
Course
time point,
corrections. Yeah.
it was overly, the women had to act to be pleasing to the men. And I feel like we've course corrected to the point where the guys are supposed to be the ones that kind of bend over backwards to please the women. But also, I don't think that the rules are very well stated, so they don't know what they're doing.
Also, but a lot. But here, there's also another element too. Is that it's not that the guy goes out of his way to be the worst of humanity, but you kind of guys aren't into playing. They've seen a lot of gamesmanship where it's, oh, I'm going to throw this little statement out here as a test to him or whatever, and then, I, I, yeah, if we want to play games, we'll go grab a
I
PlayStation.
feel like
You
for
know,
all of time, though, courtship has been a game.
yes,
But it was a game with defined rules and roles that people pretty comfortably knew how to play.
and it was spoken of in
Right.
and different cultures had their own version of that courting and how they were. I mean, the Spanish and the French and
There
the
was an art
English.
to it. It
Yeah,
was described as a dance, not as much a game, but as a dance. And I think that,
that sounds less like a anti people fighting against each other sound. I
mhm,
like that sounding better than that. Go ahead. Sorry.
and somehow we've ended up with just a lot of people very, very lost.
Mm,
And I feel like the more that people get online and look for advice for other people, the more lost that they become in how to actually act. And the more that people try to push back gender roles, the more that they become lost too. And yet, not all gender roles are good. There were some things that, from back in the day that were toxic, that we don't want
yeah,
to have those. So it's like, just
they
where do we
benefited the
land? How
man
do we find?
100% and benefited the
Yeah.
woman 2%, and it just and we want to look at, even when you lay down your desires to support the other person, there can be some benefit. I don't think that somebody would just sacrifice everything they are and then there's nothing that they get in return at all. I mean, we say that we sacrifice for each other and things like that, but there's a joy, or there's something good that can come of laying down your life for someone else. If it was just, I get absolutely nothing, that's where you get this whole thing where they're like, I give everything and I get nothing for it at all. Relationships just can crumble.
And it's kind of funny because I'm sitting here going, we're two people who our wedding anniversary is coming up this week. It will already have been passed by the time this video is posted. But
So happy anniversary.
yeah,
I'll just go ahead and say it.
we've been married for 21 years. We haven't had to deal with the dating world in a long time. When we were growing up, we were the I kissed dating goodbye generation. That was the thing that,
That's an interesting
for young,
story there.
yes, it is. But for young Christian teens especially, that was the rage when I was a teenager. Maybe you were past the
I didn't
teenager
know
since you're a
anything
little bit
about,
older
you
than
actually
me.
told me about it. I didn't know anything about it. It was our whole thing, my whole thing was very much so more secular in terms of, you like a girl, you ask her out, you're able to drive, you're not looking to get married, but you also will maybe not, it's funny, you don't look to get married, but you kind of have that as on the back burner as a possibility. but yet you're not always doing the right thing that would bring somebody in that would be, that would be a marriage material. So it's kind of like you're, it's too kind of two-sided and kind of unbalanced. But,
This
you
still
know,
seemed like it was a lot simpler. And then, like, for what you're talking about,
pre
it seemed
Web
like it was
2.0, I guess
still
you'd call it.
pretty much there was an expectation of the guy was supposed to ask most of the time, but it was okay for the girl to ask, right?
That was super rare, and it would be like, seeing a Bigfoot walking through a forest. I mean, it's that rare. And nowadays, I've heard people say, "Well, I'm a more of a, evolved, person. I don't mind if a girl asks me out." I that I'm s- Look, that's I was still from the late '90s, early 2000s mindset, and that would have been still kind of strange
Hmm, that's
for
interesting.
a woman to ask a man to marry him. Like, okay, I saw a recent interview
No,
between
I don't mean to
two actors. Oh,
marry. I
oh,
mean just to date.
well,
It was
I
that's what I
hope
meant
they
by
asked
it
me
would be
out. I
okay
hope
for
they
a
asked
girl
me
to
out.
ask. It would be okay for a girl to say, "Hey, do you want to go on a date?" That would be okay then. Rare, yes, but it
Al-
would be
Alabama
okay.
boys. I don't
So
know.
you're going back to like these, these fictional books that are set in these late 1800s, early 1900s. You never would have had a woman ask the guy on a date.
Oh, that would have been
Now
akin to
she could express interest, but there was a very it kind of was frowned on. She would be seen as bold. You
brazen,
look at
a hussy.
Grace Livingston Hill books from the, early
I
1900s,
don't know if that would ever
1920s,
happen in a
1930s.
Grace Livingston Hill book.
No, see, that's the thing. You
Do
had
tell.
in Grace Livingston Hill, you had this very much strong juxtaposition of these modern, bold young women who dressed very provocatively and put on makeup and painted their lips red and would go around being, asking the men.
Heaven forfend.
Yeah, and that
Ankles? Did
was,
anyone show any ankles?
but those girls were painted in a very negative light. And the ones that were the main characters, the heroines of the stories, were the ones who were very innocent, who were very pure, who the guy always, he would talk about how she was a breath of fresh air
Open
among
a
all of these
door
very
for the
modern
lady and very
women.
maybe modern chivalry, a little chivalrous, somewhat.
She would be genteel, she would be demure. And I'm sorry, I just had a flashback. Very demure, very, very mindful.
Yeah, that's where most young people that are not our age would have heard those
Mm,
phrases as a meme. But it comes from a place.
mhm.
It exists.
And I mean, I think that there's a lot of people nowadays that do value being demure in behavior, but it kind of it leaves it to you need the man to actually be strong, to be forward, to be secure in himself enough to then make that first step and approach. And I don't, I think that women still want that from men, unless they're really scarred. I think that when women have been hurt, then they kind of, will lash out against that. But there still is a desire for men to be strong, to be self confident. And that's a very attractive thing to a woman, as long as he's not, as long as he then won't take no for an answer. That's never a good thing. It's like if
Would they
if you get
say,
turned
yeah,
down, if you get rejected, then leave, but be willing to make that first step.
yeah, what was it? I heard one person say it's okay that the word pursue is not a bad word. Chase is not something that we want to do. And what I mean is that you can pursue someone and approach someone, but if they're constantly, playing hard to get, I will tell you this right now: back in the day when somebody would play hard to get, you're like, oh, a challenge. We, I can't speak for all men, but most men that I've seen aren't really down for challenge, even though they like to go, hey, I challenge myself with different things. Life is a challenge. Do you really want to come home to somebody that is going to rock your worldview and butt heads with you all the time just because it's interesting? You want somebody that feels like home, that feels, that you feel peace with, even when you're talking with them. And yeah, there might be some, very stimulating dialogue, but it doesn't mean that, you want somebody who's just anti what you're saying just to be anti what you're saying and because it's a challenge. I mean, you want somebody who feels right and hard to get. Okay, well, good luck with that. So it just, why would we want to do that? And I think I think there's a backlash with that, with the hard to get thing. It's not good. It doesn't work. We did talk about this, I think, this bit, part of this when we talked about how we met, and it was talked about the modern romance where you've got five different people that you could possibly be interested in, and very
Okay. So we had to go get our son back in bed. So we're going to try and jump back in. Pardon us if thoughts are not exactly connected here. We're going to we're going to keep going though.
okay. Yeah, early on, I think it was one of the earlier episodes we had talked about how me and Rachel and I met, however the grammar goes with that, and there was this thing where because of the prevalence of social media and apps and things like that, that you could have five or six people that you're interested in, and as long as they were available and the current meeting with the current person didn't go right, you could just drop them and dine and dash and go to the next person, so to speak. And there seems to be this thing where you're not really focusing on who you're with, and you tend to have tons of red flags where maybe they aren't necessary. And it seems to be that there are so many options, but if there were that many options, people would actually be happy, and they're
Mm.
not. And so,
Do you feel like there's so many options available that people just aren't even giving a chance to people anymore?
yeah. And the guys are like, well, I also feel like I got used, to get a free meal, and
Mm.
that may have been what was going on. And I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for old fashioned, but with a modern mindset. I don't think that women need to go, well, I don't need to say anything, or I don't need to have boundaries, or I don't need to voice my opinions, for the fear of being seen as too brazen a woman, or too, those things that we talked about from the old fashioned books. I think that,
Does it seem like it's more too that people like really fear wasting time? There seems to be an almost visceral just I just wasted my time on that and it didn't work out mentality. And I don't know if that's because people are waiting longer to date or I don't know what's causing that.
they're
Why
what
people get so mad
they're
when
waiting too
they
late to get serious, because or to settle down.
mm,
They, instead of heading towards something they need to go to eventually, they end up dating anybody and everybody, and it becomes meaningless. But to somebody who wants somebody that's willing to settle down, they look at that and went, I never did all those things and went to dated all those guys that you did, and it kind of just it looks like you're just you had fun and now it's time to be boring, and no guy likes to be 155th choice. Oh, I'm the safe, boring alternative. Awesome. They want to be somebody that you chose because you appeal to them. And I think that there's something to be said for the way that people met back in the day, and we talked about that before. But once you're in the relationship, or not just relationship, getting to know each other, if there were some courtship rules and things like that, I think that honestly that might appeal to some people, but it might also feel a little bit, like a step backwards. And so that's kind of the balance.
Think that, yeah, I really hated what happened to the I Kiss Dating Goodbye concept, because I liked having more of those rules, as a young Christian girl, of going, this is what I can expect. This is what I can, and having the parents kind of involved in setting boundaries. And but there was this expectation of, I'm going to find a young man who actually approaches me in this way and is willing to jump through all of these hoops to do this, because, yeah, of course, that's just what I'm going to find. And that wasn't our experience. I think that there was a lot of pushback from that book, with a lot of people not really understanding or going too far with it, or I'm not really sure.
It also, you're connecting the art with the artist, or the
Hmm.
book with the writer, because the writer of that book, he really did a big 180 even with regard to his own belief system in Christianity. And so it became fruit of the poison tree. They're like, okay, so this guy doesn't even believe, and he even disavowed his own book. And when he deconstructed, he deconstructed hard. He did demolition and did plenty of interviews about it, and dropped his ministry. But most of the things he talked about after that were
I don't
about deconstruction.
know that Christians needed to have their own kind of separate courtship rules in that way. I
Ah,
think
okay.
that we needed to be able to interact with the world, and yet at the same time be other, but in a more, I think that maybe it went a little too legalistic, was the problem with
That
it.
that is a chance. That's a
Anytime that
yeah.
you get those rules that are based off of rules rather than based off of a heart posture of following God, then I think that you can have problems. And I mean, the church has shown time and time again, even from before Jesus, that when you get too tied up in rules rather than the heart, that it's not going to work.
You end up serving the
So,
rules rather than the one who set them forth. You do because you're either afraid, or because it brings a structure, and structure is safe, and structure is, you know um, it's almost like it keeps you from the worst possible things. But if you have the heart and you love who made the rules and understand why they did, then you have a better appreciation for it, and it's not just law for law's sake, which has brought nothing but trouble for a lot of different, you know,
we do
viewpoints of
need
Christianity.
we need rules. I mean, not saying that rules are a bad thing. I think rules are beautiful. I think they keep us safe. But I think that we need to understand the whys, that we need to understand what they're there for, in order to be able to live them out, and not just put the rules up on the pedestal, so to speak. So, yeah, I don't know. With all of that, I love reading those old fashioned books, those old timey books. I love seeing, even modern writers like Kit Morgan that are trying to set this stage and have this feeling, and thus they're holding to those old timey values, where, you know, they might not always understand everything about that time period. And, modern writers, I think, struggle sometimes
Yeah,
with having their characters be a little bit too forward. And
yeah,
they may not always seem quite authentic, because their main characters are thinking in very modern ways about relationships and about,
because they're being written by modern authors,
right.
and but also, well, something's missing. And I think that when you have stories where you have the male character and he's heroic and it appeals to men, it's because we're missing something. We don't feel like heroes in this world. We're like, let me go get the groceries again, or let me go do this, I'm gonna go cut the grass. And it's just kind of this, but you have this guy who's willing to pick up a sword and or to leap into the fray for those he loves. And we men gravitate, many men gravitate toward those things. And not because we're trying to be toxically masculine, but because something is not quite missing. Something's not quite right. Something's missing from our modern experience. And I'm wondering if something's missing from the way that men and women court each other or let each other know they're interested. And so maybe that's why they're going back to that old fashioned way, because something in them yearns
Well,
for that.
I was going to say that
Yeah.
while I think that it is beautiful to read that, I also don't think that it's something that could necessarily work in today's society. I think
Hmm.
that there is a need for open and honest communication and not being afraid from either gender to just make the statements, to just say, hey, I like you. Do you want to try having a relationship? And then when you're in a relationship, for either one to be able to check in and say, where are we? What are we doing right now? What are we thinking?
Oh, so
That's
many guys are like, I don't want
yeah.
they don't want to get, the
Even if
definition of, am
it's
I your girlfriend? That kind of thing. They avoid that.
even if it's a I don't really know yet, you know? And I mean, you don't want to be impatient with the process of falling in love. You don't want to push somebody for to know something that they don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's a bad thing to ask. Or even just, for a girl to go, I'm not even really sure right now whether this guy is flirting with me or not, and to just ask and say, hey, what's
What's
happening?
going on here?
But at the same time, as I don't think it's a bad thing for a girl to have to ask, I really kind of hate that a girl does or would ever feel like they have to ask a guy because I am just old fashioned enough, or maybe I've just read enough old fashioned books to go, if a guy is interested in a girl, I really, really think they should make it plain and be willing to shoot their shot. And it's really sad to me to see so many young guys that don't have a clue how to actually ask a girl on a date or if they're interested, and then be able to handle if they're rejected. You're hearing a lot of that now, of guys not knowing what to do with a no.
But sometimes it's not just a no. It's a no with a little, veiled insult. And maybe she might be with her girlfriends and they like giggle to each other and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you might as well just have shot me with
Well,
a with
honestly,
a
if they
machine
do
gun.
that, the guy's reaction should be, phew, dodged a bullet there.
Right.
You know, that was not one that I would ever want to get involved in. It shouldn't ever be oh, there's something wrong with me. It shouldn't affect your confidence if somebody else doesn't react in the way that you wanted them to. Right?
Right.
And that's just a growing up and learning to actually love yourself and be confident in who you are and not base your self-worth off of other people's words or reactions.
a great philosopher, Keanu Reeves, once said, you didn't know I was going there. He said, he was telling somebody, he said, when someone rejects you or is not the person you really need to be around or with, you can thank them. Thank them because there are, and he had this number, he said, there's 6 billion, and he'd get this big long number minus them and said, now you know not to spend your time with this person, and you have this 6 billion amount of people to spend your time on, so they basically just said they freed you up to spend your time with other people who may or may not, so it's, you just basically help them not waste their precious time on someone who is not for them, or not, not supportive of them, or not a positive thing in their life. So that's a good way to think of it. It just, next, you know, and it's easier said than done, but it really, you have to have a really good sense of self
Mhm.
to be able to navigate that, and to just pass on.
And when most people are starting to enter the world of dating and needing that the most is usually when they are still in the process of learning who they are and of gaining that self-confidence. It's just all kind of part of the process of growing up. Huh?
Yes.
So, with that being said, Bella, was she
Hmm.
right or wrong to not tell the guys no?
I see something bad with that. I see a people pleaser. I see a situation where she could get in over her head, where somebody would be a little too forward and she wouldn't know how to say no. And nothing good can come of that. I think that setting some honest boundaries, you're not making people jump through hoops. You're basically saying, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And, if you're willing to go with that, cool. If not, the other 6 billion people on planet Earth, I so I have to say that
So, not healthy.
I don't think it's healthy. I really don't.
See,
Let
and
people know
that
your values
is,
up front, what you value, and if they respect that, cool.
it's funny because it's not something that before this lady pointed out where it came from, it wasn't something that even really registered to me as being problematic. Knowing where it came from, it was like, oh, well, that actually is very problematic. The idea that she doesn't feel like she can, rather than it just being a part of her personality, or, even I think that for a lot of girls, the idea of she had, you know, Tyler that wouldn't take no for an answer, that didn't, she was like, oh, well, I can't do it. And he's like, oh, well, it'll be prom. And then he went around the entire school saying that he was taking her to prom.
That was in the book. I don't remember that from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it ended up having to be Edward to set him straight, which a lot of girls would take as, oh, isn't that so romantic? He stepped in and was her hero in that. But it's like, girl, why did you need him to be your hero there? What if he wasn't there? What were you going to do with somebody who is telling the entire school, are you just going to make another excuse?
Right.
What are you going to
Fall back in those
do?
old patterns.
Right. Whereas, what if she had had somebody else that she wanted to ask her that then wasn't going to ask her because he thought she was taken? She just happened to have a mind reader that,
Literally.
yeah, a literal mind reader that was able to get her out of that situation. But I don't think that's something that girls need to romanticize a guy doing that for them. Just actually having a voice for herself and being able to set boundaries. So, with that, it's like, okay, so demure as an old fashioned value,
There's a
just
modesty with that,
a
with the
modesty with it,
demurity, if that's.
knowing, not being bold or demanding. There's something, that maybe in some cases that's a good thing. In the old fashioned setting, it certainly was a good thing. Is it still applicable in a lot of ways today? I think that with a lot of those old fashioned values, as with a lot of those old fashioned values, it kind of is one of those that needs to adapt to today.
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Yeah.
I don't think it needs to
I
be
think
just
there's a
completely
balance to
mutated.
be
Yeah.
found where you can find an honesty and a communication and being able to set your boundaries while also going, you don't need to, it's okay to speak. It's still okay not to be mean,
Right.
or to be impatient. I guess when you put a, yeah, I think that's it, isn't it?
You also don't want to be a pushover, and just go whatever you want, and you don't have a voice of your own, and whatever the other person wants always, and they're like, tell me what you.
I think that, yeah, there's an element of being patient, of allowing the other person to figure out what they're thinking and what they're feeling,
Mhm.
of allowing yourself not needing to know things too fast.
Right.
That is a part of being demure, but also it being okay to communicate and to ask for communication. That is kind of needed there. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Okay. We've solved it, guys.
We done it. We done it.
Oh goodness, I have a feeling there's so much more to this or to this conversation, and so many things that people could add, especially people who are actually in the dating world today that are still working it out and still figuring out, that could add other angles to this conversation that we just.
A lot of the videos that come up, I guess I am kind of strangely curious. I'll listen to them, and I guess I listen to them enough that it keeps coming up in my feed. And I will just go, thank God I'm not in the dating pool. I'm so thankful I met you when I did. It was before the real big birth of social media and of all the you know issues that it's caused. I mean, 20 years it has completely upended so many different things. And what's wrong with a little bit of traditional?
But we have 3 children, all in their teens, who are entering that world right now.
Yeah,
It's
that's a hard pill to swallow, to be honest. I
yeah.
don't envy them at all, but I hope that we can
I think
bring some
though,
wisdom to their
yeah,
situation.
for them, just the same as it was for us. And I think just the same as for couples that lived, a century ago.
Right.
There's still the aspect of, you pray, you ask God to guide you to the one that is right for you. Because you don't need to have multiple successful dating stories. You just need to have one. You just need to find that one. And if you ask God to lead you and guide you, and you are a person that is willing to communicate and to forgive and to be patient, then you can be successful now just the same as you could back then.
And have red flags, have green flags, but don't have an ick list, of things that, about that person that or about it, because no one is going to meet your criteria if you have this list of.
I don't know about that. I think
Oh,
that maybe just have a
don't breathe
realistic
too
ick
loud.
list.
Don't.
This is not a realistic ick list. Having an
No.
ick list is fine as long as it's a realistic one.
Right.
But I think that, again, we can find a lot of realism from books and from movies and from looking at and observing the couples that you know? And I think that when it comes to dating, even just looking at the married couples around you and being willing to take advice and hear those stories, that can be a really good thing, a really beautiful thing. I
And we don't need to go completely old fashioned. Maybe it needs to be a hybrid of some modern sensibilities about the way men and women interact with a little bit of that old fashioned traditional nature, because the respect that it has within it is sorely lacking.
So
Okay.
is what we need for the modern dating world
Hmm?
more Wesleys? When you
As you wish.
realize that as you wish really means I love you.
As you wish.
And then we need more of, what was the king's name? Because I
Wait,
was
which
about to
which
say Sir
one?
Humperdinck, but Humperdinck, wait, Humperdinck is the prince, right? Or the king?
Prince Humperdinck, yes. He was
Okay,
he.
Humperdinck.
You talking about the old man? And he, oh, she kissed me on the cheek.
Well, I mean, Humperdinck. I mean, Buttercup was very
Ah!
demure,
You
right?
keep saying that. Stop saying that name. Stop it. You
And
said it 5
Humperdinck just
times.
came in and he swoops her up. He carries her
No,
off.
it did.
He didn't do like Wesley and make her actually realize over a period of time that every time that he was saying "as you wish," it meant he loved her. But
You can also
Humperdinck
show how
just
you care
came in
about
and
somebody else by putting your hand on their head when they're cold.
of course, Humperdinck also didn't take no for an answer, which is a huge red flag. I think that should be on the ick list for every girl. That's an acceptable thing on the ick list.
Yeah,
If you say no, plain and simple, I will die first, and he doesn't take no for an answer,
that can be
that's an ick.
arranged.
That's a red flag.
Right, exactly.
So have your ick list.
Hmm.
Have it be a realistic ick list.
You can't be like Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride. Also, well, can you have it?
Don't have
Yeah,
expectations that every guy that you date has to be over 6 feet tall and be making six figures.
exactly. You cut out so many people with that. Yeah,
Right. Have your, but having a
be
guy that is
realistic.
capable of actually letting you know whether they're interested in you or not, that's, that's an acceptable thing, right? Just look back on all of these books that I've read, and that is the one thing that in a lot of those old fashioned books just stands out time and time again is the poor girl who's been taught to be demure, who's taught to be, just flirt a little bit, but then wait for the guy to make the first move. And she never ever can tell whether Mr. Bingley actually likes her or not. And that's not
And then
okay.
doesn't he have to have a conversation with Darcy, and Darcy sets him straight, and then finally he does ask?
Mhm.
He does say he's
But it
interested.
actually took Darcy finding out from Elizabeth that Jane liked Bingley for Darcy then to go
Because
tell
Darcy
Bingley,
didn't even
hey,
get it.
you need to go. Yeah. So there's a
So we
point
were
where
clueless back
you can
then
be
and now too.
too much or you can be not enough.
Mindless rather than mindful.
Right. It's an art. And I think that however it goes and however many ups and downs there are on the dating journey, it's still a beautiful thing when you end up together and married. And happy anniversary, dear.
Happy anniversary, sweetie. And also, I got one to add for the ick list. Actually, two.
Oh.
If they don't like Princess Bride, that's an ick. And they aren't subscribed to Weatherford Daze. All right, there you go. And done.
We'll see you next
We'll
week.
see you next week. Bye.